All right, at this point, our kids can be dismissed for Children's Church, 3 and 4 years old. I just want to remind you that starting up in September, our full Children's Church programming is going to resume, and that will be for kids 4 years old through 4th grade. But even kids that are under 4 but kind of out of nursery, they're welcome to join in that as well. You can talk to Pastor Jared if you have a child in that age range. Again, that starts September. First Sunday in September, our full age for Children's Church is going to resume. But this morning, we have a special guest with us, Brother Dave Penny, who is one of the instructors with an organization called the Genesis Academy, and they do these seminars called the Joshua Project, and he'll share a little bit more about that. We've been talking about this a couple times now, letting you know that we're going to be hosting one of these seminars in the fall, in October. And the dates are in your bulletin. You can mark those on your calendar. But Dave will explain a little bit more about how the seminar works. But Dave Penny is a graduate of MIT in engineering, and he also holds a master's degree in Biblical Greek and Hebrew. He also was a former missionary to Tunisia. He's the owner of a sand dredging company, and Dave is a consultant and Bible teacher and presents on scientific laws, cosmology, atmosphere, the ice age, and other topics related to Christian apologetics and science. He lives in Lawrence and is married to his wife, Carmen, and they have raised 5 children. We're delighted to have Dave with us here today to bring the word, and would you just join me in welcoming him to speak today.
Thanks a lot, John. A little bit, just before I begin, this Joshua project that we're doing it goes back about, 14 years ago, 15 years ago, when we got together, several of us that are aging a little bit. We'd had different careers. A lot of us became Christians back in the 60s, early 60s and mid 60s, and all of them have PhDs except me. Our purpose was we were going to develop a curriculum for homeschoolers in science and math and Christian schools, which there is kind of a weakness of this Christian schools, and but in the process, we haven't finished that project. We got detailed because we realized that all these churches, all the surveys were showing that the churches, evangelical churches, Baptist, Bible churches, are losing about 80% of their kids. And the reason is because of evolution and old universe cosmology, because it calls into question the Old Testament, especially Genesis. Whether it's true, if you knock out the first of Genesis, you don't have much of the Bible left. All of your theology begins there. And if you don't have confidence that the Bible's telling you the truth there, then it's probably not telling you the truth anyplace else. And it's been a design of the secularists and humanists to use the educational system to knock that out. So we're going to do we've done one a number of years ago here, but it was a 6-week course. This will be just only 2 days. Friday evening we'll do 2 courses. And then in Saturday, there'll be 4 of them. They'll be shorter than the regular deal, but we look forward. It'll be October 24th and 25th, Friday and Saturday. Friday night, of course, the 2 sessions, and then Saturday, 4 sessions. And I think the church is supplying some refreshments and a few things like that. So we look forward to having you come here. The thing that when I look at people around me in life, and myself included, I look at people and we're involved in a very small world that we live in. Our house, our car, our kids, our activities, getting up in the morning, shaving for men, women getting themselves more beautiful than we are. I don't even have much hair to comb. I can use my hand. But our lives are just zeroed in the rest of the world we don't think much of. It never enters our mind. And we certainly don't think of the cosmos the macrocosm that we live in, nor do we think of the microcosm that we're part of. And what you have here is things that disappear into infinity in both directions, both in size of the universe and in our bodies, that I'll speak a little bit more about later. What I wanted to do was just cover a little bit of the Genesis 1 through 11, or 1 and 2 really, of just two aspects of it. If you could turn with me to Genesis 1. What you have in the first, let me explain a little bit about this. I came from a non-biblical background. It's a religious background, but we didn't believe the scriptures and everything. And I'd been indoctrinated when I was young, had a great interest in science. And I was fortunate. I had people that were high-powered professors in paleontology that took me around as a kid to look at rock formations and everything. I enjoyed everything, the world around me. I'd disappear into encyclopedia, a book, reading one subject and then go to another and learning about the world around me. You know, you see this with little kids. They start from the very beginning of learning the world and words they use and everything. Well, I just continued on. And when I was a young a teenager, I really loved the world of science. And I became very interested in it. The problem is I didn't have, even though I had a God and Country Award from the Scouts, I didn't, and we read portions of the scriptures. I never understood the scriptures too much, except I was kind of, because of my education, I was indoctrinated with evolution and with old universe cosmology. At that time, there was Sir Frederick Hoyle had a steady state idea, and later he coined the term Big Bang, because he had to change it. It wasn't scientifically possible to have a steady state universe. It just remains disordered energy and matter disappears, and others ordered stuff reappears. So we had to change over, and this was basically it happened largely in the 50s, and then into the 60s, it became prominent, the Big Bang theory. And that's where the universe comes out of a singularity point that's smaller than an atom and expands into the whole universe that we see now. We'll get into that. By the way, those two ideas scientifically are being hammered. Genetics has killed evolution. There is no transition between any kinds, or even species for that matter. It just doesn't happen. Because now, before we didn't ever know about the genome, the genetic code, until Crick and Watson in the 1950s. And genetics had just killed it. And I don't have the time to go into it, but it's we don't even in our course devote much time to it because it's so absurd. It's taught in the schools and among academia, but as you're going to find, I used to have debates. After I became a believer and was living in Lawrence, I became a city commissioner in Lawrence, and it's the most blue part of the state. But these professors would go after me. And I got invited to the physics club at KU and 2 or 3 times. But the problem is, I was coming from where they used to be. And they have questions. I had answers for questions they haven't even asked. And after about 2 sessions of this, all the students are laughing because these people live in what I call a silo. They suffer from intellectual incest. They're inbreds intellectually. They're not understanding the science. And I didn't become a believer until I was my first year at MIT. And then I began to learn real science, hardcore science. And what it does is, even though my teachers, none of them were believers, the science we had in physics began to kill this whole deal of for instance, I was a pre-med, so I had a lot of pre-med requirements, and we studied the cell, which had, since Crick and Watson, we began to understand the cell. All life comes from the cells and the genetic code in there. There's about 3 billion bits of information in it. Well, as you begin to understand, everything's going downhill. As one of the best geneticists out there, John Sanford, said, We have never seen, we can code the stuff, we have never seen a beneficial mutation. In fact, the genetic code that you have is wired to deal with situations you've never faced. So what you have in this is there's two zones that we live in. We live in the middle zone between the infinitely large and the infinitely small. I'd like to cover this. In Genesis 1, you have these days. Now, people say, oh, I used to be a day-age person, thinking this is long periods of time, these deals of Genesis. I tried to sort it out after I became a Christian and going through there and said, well, how does this fit in the evolutionary process of the universe? How do these things develop, become more and more complex? Well, it's not possible. And what you have here in these descriptions, the descriptions in Genesis, who wrote this thing? God. Who's the creator? God. He made the things. Does he know how it works? Does he know how it began? What you have is a problem in Genesis. This is a description of a 6-day creation of everything we see, from the microcosm to the from the macrocosm to the microcosm. Well, what you have here is described in terms of days. A day in the Old Testament, in Greek, or even in Hebrew, can mean a longer period of time, but never when it's with a day and a night, and when numbers are attached to it. First day, second day. It's always a 24-hour day, without exception. So what you hear, you have a problem then. If you're a Christian and you come from the background that I did, how do these pieces fit? How did this thing really come to be? Was it something that took place because of the genealogies of Genesis 5 and 11? Is it a period of only 8,000 years or less? Or is it a period of 13.7 billion years? Those things don't fit together. And did life appear at the same period of time in 6 days, the universe and life? Or did it happen over 1 billion years? Life appeared on the earth and began, as one guy said, from the scum. Oh, how does that go? It's something like from the no, it's from the goo to you by way of the zoo. And it's really, that's the basic, when you get down to it, that's the essence of what evolution is of life. And what you have in the Big Bang is you have this big explosion, and out of this come all these galaxies and solar systems and stars and everything else occurring. And we don't have the time to do it. We'll do it in the project, show you that these are all violations of the two most basic laws of science from which we get all of our science. A fellow there at MIT, he took me, I was struggling. They about buried me the first year there. I hadn't had calculus and everything else. And fortunately, I fell into a small group. I was a fraternity that had the highest grade point average at MIT at that time. They had a system down of tutoring you and cranking you up, and we became the best students at MIT. And this guy got a hold of me. He's not a believer. None of them were believers, I don't think. Maybe one of them. Took me and turned me from a C+ student to an A student in physics. And physics is the heart of science. Biological forms are just forms of chemistry. No exchange of the nuclear part. It's just the electron rings exchanging orbitals. Anyway, he took me from that and showed me, because we had files of the best exams, past exams that we practiced for and study for. We chose a mentor in the house. This is only 35 guys. And it was high octane. I mean, they pushed you. And he says, well, let me see. You're having trouble, David, he said, with physics. Let me see how you're doing. He starts slapping problems down. And I start to write my little formulas. Because the way science teaches today, it's a mess. You got to learn jillions of formulas for mechanical things, electromagnetic things, field theories, right on down the line. And if you don't get, but he said, listen, these professors are smart, and that things only come to two laws. And he explained those two laws to me. 70 to 80% of coming out of the first law, it's the conservation of matter and energy in every interaction. The second was, that's the quantity law. The second one's the quality law. And he says, everything goes to disorder. You may get order out of something, but there's a greater disorder created in matter and energy. And that matter and energy is everything, he said. And I said, well, those are the laws of thermodynamics. Well, he started throwing it back to me. He says, no, those are the laws of science, Dave. And he regrouped me. And it took some time. I wanted to write my little formulas down. And he says, no, what's conserved here in matter and energy? The universe can't create or destroy any of it. He's not even a Christian, and he knows that. And he says, and nothing goes from disordered states to ordered states because statistically there's more disordered states than ordered states. And he's saying, this thing's running down. The stars are burning out. We don't have perpetual motion machines. You are dying because of this law. Everything's going down. Eventually the whole universe will die. Well, he regrouped me with these laws. Well, what it has, all of this comes out of, by the way, the first 3 chapters of Genesis. These laws. On the 6th day, since then there's no matter or energy. None at all. Neither created nor destroyed. And that's about 80% of the laws of science. And then in the fall of man, God maintained it in this beautiful state that he will in the future recreate it. And there won't be this second law, the law of death and disorder. It's called entropy. That won't exist in the future. But he maintained it until man sinned. And as it says, sin entered the world and death through sin. It's all explained here, like 1 Corinthians 15, Romans 8. All of these things explain it very clearly. What happened in the physical realm. But let's look at it how it was, how he created it. Let's go to day 4. Like I said, these are 24-hour days. Day 4, it says in Genesis 1:14. Then God said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heavens. What's happened, by the way, let me back up again. In the first 3 chapters of the first 3 days, it only deals with the earth, okay? There's no stars. There's no universe. Everything starts with the earth, and it's a mess. It's just water. Okay? And what he does is he shines light into it, puts energy in for the first time. Second day, what does he do? He puts a firmament between the waters below and the waters above. When I first read that, from a scientific point of view, I said, what's this talking about? As a Christian, I was trying to sort this out. It doesn't make sense. Well, you learn that the waters below were divided into lands and seas on the 3rd day, okay? So the firmament's above that. In fact, it says later in day 5 that the birds fly above the earth and across the face of the firmament. Well, it's not just something that's firm, it's something that's expansive and has some substance to it. I worked in the Apollo project, and one of the things we learned about this firmament, we're coming back in from the moon at 12,000 miles an hour, okay? And people say, well, the air is not solid. Till you kind of come in on it. Coming into that, it's like hitting a wall. If you hit it too flat, you'll skip. And those guys are dead. They'll land out someplace out there. It's like skipping rocks on a surface of a lake. If you come in too deep, you'll burn up. In fact, at re-entry, you don't know if they've succeeded or not, whether they skipped or whether they came in too deep or whether they would hit the right thing. The front of that thing has a layer of stuff that's made to burn off, and you can see these re-entry deals in Washington, D.C. at the Smithsonian. You can tell it's the exact point because all the things burn in from that direction. And it burns that thing off. It's so violent, there's no radio contact. And everything, you don't hear anything until what? The chutes go out. And everyone's standing there in silence. Then when they hear those guys, this is Apollo, and everyone just cheers. It's just before they come down and hit the water. But it's violent. This firmament that we have, God put around, but there's waters above. And I said, what's this? What's this? Well, we'll get into that in this deal. Henry Morris, who was the head of the great creationist, who was the head of the Department of Engineering at Virginia Tech, and also his specialty is hydrology. He says, that was water up there, and then when the sun appeared in day 4, it turns to vapor. Do you know today, or this week, what was the temperature here yesterday? 85? 86? What's the temperature at 6 miles up? 60, 70 below. You know at 70 below, you can spit and it'll freeze before it hits the ground. It's that cold. But above that, do you know what the temperatures are? 1,000, 1,500 degrees above. Water won't exist. It exists, but it's vapor, hot vapor. Do you know what that does to the earth? All kinds of good things. It makes things unbelievable that Adam and Eve could walk around with no clothes, not feel anything. There's uniform temperatures over the whole face of the earth, so that at Antarctica, our cold beds, some of the largest in the world there, and also in Siberia, are made out of what? Tropical and semi-tropical plants. You can't even grow trees in those areas. It gives you a uniform temperature over the earth. Water is one of the best insulators against radiation. So what happens? You end up with a uniform temperature over the whole earth, just like Venus does. It has an atmosphere much heavier than ours, and it has to be because it's more of its CO2 and everything, but it spreads the temperatures so that Venus, which doesn't even rotate, it's locked to the sun, has the same temperature at the equators as it has in the poles. So what would happen if you have this water vapor over there? You can see through it. You can see the stars. You can see the sun, which now appear on the 4th day. And it keeps a uniform temperature, but also what do you have? You have no storm fronts. You won't have rain under this canopy, water canopy, vapor now, with the sun appearing on the 4th day. And you know what else? Radiation doesn't destroy people's genetic material, so people live a long time, 930 years. Do you know why after the flood it drops down? We get all that radiation that we're not protected from. That water vapor disappeared. It came down in the flood. A lot of things are explained. These huge coal beds, longevity of life, no rain before. There's a whole lot of things that we know in geology that they existed that don't exist today. This is a paradise set up of longevity and beauty. Let's read about, though, what happens on this 4th day. Then the Lord said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heavens to divide the day from the night. And then let them be for signs and seasons and for days and years. See, everything's determined by the celestial bodies, our days, nights, and seasons. And let them be for lights in the firmament of the heavens to give light on the earth. And so it was. Then God made 2 great lights, the greater light to rule the day and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. God set them in the firmament of the heavens and gave light on the earth to rule over the day and over the night and to divide the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good. So was it evening and the morning, the 4th day. These celestial bodies did not exist until the 4th day. The earth exists, but these celestial bodies did not exist. He's telling us how he built this thing. And this is built in a very clever way so that life here on the earth can be what it is. This is the only place in the universe that we could live and life could be carried on. We've been listening for centuries, for decades, with big radio telescopes to listen if there's anyone out there. You know, there's no one out there. We're not getting sounds from them. There's no aliens out there. There's no hospitable place they can live. When we worked in the space program, space is a very dangerous place if you leave the Earth. You get a lot of radiation. You don't want to live on the Mars or the moon or anything like that. Even if you had perfect environment, you won't live very long. It's hostile out there. Cosmic rays, gamma rays, X-rays, everything that'll terminate your life. We're living here, kept children. God made it that way. Beautiful place. But let me tell you how big it is. We set up, I didn't, but our government did set up a Hubble space telescope, okay? It goes around the Earth about every hour and a half, basically. And it's shielded from the sun as best as it can, but it's not very good. And its lenses, because you get in the sun, the lenses get distorted and you can't take pictures. And they take these beautiful pictures. I don't know if you've ever seen the Hubble shots. Beautiful pictures, deep into space. We didn't even know that there was any, until 100 years ago, that there was any galaxies out there. All we saw was the Milky Way and stars in it. There are about 200 billion stars in our galaxy. We didn't know that. We see these nebulae and we thought, oh, that's just gas clouds out there. These were galaxies. Do you know how many galaxies now that Hubble was seeing? It's about 400 billion. But not too long ago, they put another satellite out in a very special place outside the Earth. And it only goes around the sun once a year. It's called the James Webb. It's 4 times as big as the Hubble. And it's protected from the sun, so its lenses, which are 4 times bigger than the Hubble, don't get distorted. Hey, we got our galaxy like this. You shoot perpendicular to it, and you shoot for a spot that doesn't have any stars in your vision. And they cranked up the power. Boom, boom, boom. They start taking pictures. Do you know what they saw? They saw galaxies out there. 2 to 3 times as far as Hubble was looking. Do you know what that did? That killed the Big Bang permanently. There's no way they could be blown out there and send us light back. That Big Bang theory has been patched up so many times with hyperinflation out to those in milliseconds after the Big Bang, and then it slowed down, and you'd say, hey, explain the physics of the engineering of that. How does that energy, what was the energy source that pushed it out there and then slowed it down? And they think it's expanding out, so they come up with what? Dark matter and dark energy, anti-gravity. For 96% of the universe, the matter and the energy. You say, what? What happened to gravity? Only 4% of the universe is gravity? All these things, what I'm telling you is science tells you certain things in the classrooms, in academia, but they're lies. We don't even see with the James Webb Space Telescope, we can't even see the end of the universe. There are galaxies out there. You know how many galaxies they're now estimating? 10 trillion galaxies, each with 100 billion stars. And what does Psalm 147 say? God can count them all, and he knows the name of every one of them. That's 10. That's one with 24 zeros behind it. That's hard to imagine. That's 1 trillion times 1 trillion. Stars out there. We live around one star. We think we're big stuff. Our star represents 99.95% of the mass of our solar system. We can't even calculate to set the mathematics to put them in orbit. We can only do about a 5-body system. We got 100 bodies. And there's no strings attached. They are floating around in gravity, and it's a balance between the accelerating forces and the gravitational forces to keep them from being either pulled in or shot out. This thing is beyond human expectations and calculations. You don't understand. And God made this. You think, oh, my little world here. No. Look out. And it says, and he made the stars also. You say, that's an understatement. One with 24 zeros, and he counts them all. And you know what? They're all burning out. That's why we can see them. They're getting off radiation and particles they'll never get back. And pretty soon, we'll have the same amount of matter and energy in the end, but it'll all be spread out over the whole universe. But it'll be about 4 degrees above absolute zero. Absolute zero is like minus 450 degrees Fahrenheit. That's cold, but it's all there. No more hot spots. Well, let's go to the other end. I don't have much time, but let's go to the other end. That's the big end, if you want to put it, the macrocosm. Now, we live in the microcosm, but most of you are not even aware of that. It says in verse 20, then God said, let the waters abound with abundance of living creatures. That's the water creatures. And let the birds fly across the earth, across the face of the firmament of the heavens. So God created great sea creatures and every living thing that moves, with which the waters abound according to their kind. Now this is where it becomes interesting. Everything's according to its kind. And every winged bird according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. By that way, one person raised, what do you mean by good? Is it perfect? And I said, yeah, and it's very perfect at the end, because God is used, that's used of God. Is God good? Yeah. He's perfect. And this is perfect at this point in time. And God blessed them, saying, be fruitful, multiply, and fill the waters of the seas, and let the birds multiply on the earth. And so the evening and morning was the 5th day. Then God said, let the earth bring forth living creatures according to their kind, cattle and creeping things, and beasts of the earth, each according to its kind. And it was so. So in the 5th day, you create the sea creatures and the birds. Now in the 6th day, he creates the land animals, which include us. And God made the beast of the earth according to its kind, cattle according to its kind, and everything that creeps on the earth according to its kind. I don't like creepy things, but he made them. And God saw that it was good. Again, he declares that it's good, perfect. And God said, let us make man in our image, according to our likeness. He's not talking to the angels. This is in the Godhead. He's using plurals of himself. And you know, like in John 1, it says of Jesus, and the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. But it says, and there was nothing made that he didn't make. In other words, the man that walked the surface of the earth. I had a long time, even as a Christian, believing that Jesus was the creator. But he made those things. That's why he can command to the sea, be calm. Well, if the storm stops on the sea, does it become calm? No. It goes like this for hours. What happened to the energy? Can he absorb all the energy? And did he wear himself out doing that? Is God getting tired from this creation? No. I get tired. I shovel a little bit and I get really tired. And you do too. But he speaks and these things happen. And that's why Jesus could say to the sea, peace, be still. And it's still. Great calm. Because he's the commander. He made the things. He knows how, and they obey him. But it goes on. Let's make man in our image according to our likeness. This is the Godhead determining this. The Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. You remember the Spirit was in the beginning, hovering over this darkness at the beginning. He's there. Jesus is there, and the Father's there. They're going to make man in our image. Let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. So God created man in his image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. He created Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve, by the way. I mean, there's some basic things you have to learn that somehow we don't get right in our school systems, in our educational systems. And you say, What's going on here? But let me tell you, in your body, my body, your body, there are more atoms in your body than there are stars that we could see in the universe. 10, one with 24 zeros behind it. Just cells in your body. There are between 20 and 50 trillion cells in your body. Every one of them has your genetic code that tells you what you're going to look like, what you're going to be like, and probably your lifespan. Do you think about that? Do I think about that? In my body, there are 1 billion operations going on right now. And I don't have to think about them. They keep me alive. If one of them goes wrong, I'll die. But I can think, and I don't have to think, I got to get my temperature back up. I'm not drinking enough water. I didn't eat enough food. I don't have enough proteins, this type of protein, that thing. No, you don't have to. God made us so these billion of functions with 10 to the fourth atoms in us properly organized so I can walk around and not even think about it. I can chew gum and walk together, I don't have to worry about all these other functions. That's the microcosm of the universe. You cannot, and you know what? There's no factory that we can create from scratch any living system. Grass, does it grow? Does it reproduce? Yeah. Can we take what it is, dirt, and make grass? Can we make dirt and make people from scratch? There's no living system that we have a factory that makes grass or people. They can take parts and put them together, but they can't create any of this stuff. And doesn't it ever occur to the scientists that we're living in a world in which we haven't created anything from scratch? And what's going to happen to us? We're going to go back to dirt. We're about $20 worth of chemicals, dirt, and water, about 70% water. That's why those mummies look so shrunk up. They're dehydrated completely. If you get dehydrated, you look the same way. If you go into the grave, they may find your bones, but eventually they won't even find those. We go back to what? Dirt, dust of the earth. So we have to live with a certain humility. And it didn't arrive from dirt becoming humans, like they teach in evolution. And we don't have a universe that became from a Big Bang. When you have a Big Bang, it blows everything apart. We can see that in novas that go off, okay? These are stars that blow up about every day or two in our galaxy. And we see some of them 1,000 years later. What do they look like? Do you see any planets out of them or comets or anything? They're just pieces, particles that we can't even see in gases. You don't get planets, and you don't get rotary motion, by the way. And you have to have that. None of those things arise. In other words, what we're being taught is this is telling us the truth. We're looking at a divine thing that was created perfect, and it's going down. They say, it's all here and goes up. No. Second law of physics, even Einstein says it's the most powerful law in physics, because statistically there's more states of disorder. What I'm saying is I had to change all of my views because of science. And I come back to what? This account in Genesis. That takes I had a lot of torturous things taking place in me to make that stage. And some of you probably come from the same background. Had to get rid of all these stupid ideas and come to the point that we're dealing with a God that works with an infinite big and the infinite small. In fact, we can't even see the bottom. You can't even take a picture of an electron, much less things that are smaller than that, subatomic particles. Well, I hope you'll get a little flavor of what we're going to do in this project. I hope more than that that you realize that the one who made all of this is the one that can take care of our problem of sin on the cross. He came and walked a very hard process for Jesus to do. And I think he must have been insane. We're not delightful people, by the way. And mankind isn't delightful. But he came back to undo what sin did for us to separate us from God. Let's pray. Father, we just thank you for your greatness. We regret that we're not aware of your real greatness in the universe, in the world that's all around us, big and small, and that we're part of. We just pray that you get us into our minds and hearts, that we fully appreciate what you've done just for our daily lives, but especially for our eternity and taking away our sin. In Jesus' name, amen.
As we close in song this morning,